Hey, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think this is our 37th or 38th session. I lost track of it. So thank you for being with us. Today's going to be a bit of a special session for us as we just came back from Helsinki, where we were part of the Service Design Network Global Conference in Helsinki, Finland. And we wanted to kind of like share our thoughts, our impressions, our insight collected during the 3-4 days spent in Helsinki. And we've asked some of the people on this panel to kind of like share what they've learned with you. I know there's quite a bit of FOMO around people who actually could not go to Helsinki. The conference was sold out, so a lot of you were not able to go. So we kind of felt bad about it and kind of wanted to let you know what we learned. And we're going to try to be doing this today. So I'm going to do a little bit of a quick house cleaning here. So as always, thank you so much for our sponsors who've been with us for years now, Slalom and Precocity, who are enabling us to provide you this content through Zoom and Meetup. So thank you for both Slalom and Precocity for being part of this adventure with us. Once again, today we are just introducing ourselves as Service Design Dallas. My name is Greg Lacloufie, and we also have with us Brandon, Robin, and I believe Brenda is not here today, but this is Service Design Dallas. As always, we are recording all the sessions. So if you want to share this recording with your peers or coworkers, probably tomorrow, feel free to go into our Service Design Network Dallas chapter when we have all the recordings. I think we have 36 right now. And to that point, I wanted to also add very quickly that some of our past guests were in Helsinki. So Mark Stigdorn, Adam St. John Lawrence, Jen Brizelli, Andy Pollane, Birgit McGurbusley, and Jesse Grimes were all in attendance, either as a speaker, keynote speaker, facilitator. So quite of a nice opportunity for you, or at least those who actually went to Helsinki, to meet those people and have drinks with them in the networking session. So if you want to see those recordings that go back several years, some of them, like Mark Stigdorn, I think it was a couple of years now, feel free to go and look at that. As we were discussing earlier, if you have any questions for the panel, please go into the chat and let us know. I will try to gather those and curate those and ask the panel at the end follow-up questions from yours, and then we'll try to answer your questions. So today is going to be the Service Design Network Global Conference 2024 in Helsinki. We'll try the very best we can to do a quick recap for you to see what you've missed. Before we go through that, I wanted to let you know that you can, as of today, buy some replay tickets. And I think that we have the link onto the chat. I believe the replay tickets are 175 euros. So if anything you hear today sounds interesting to you, you want to know more about it, you can actually watch all the sessions on your own time. So just go to the website and buy your replay tickets, and you can see the whole session that you may have an interest in, all the sessions. So obviously, the panel we have today here is going to be sharing the experience we had together in Helsinki. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of like great keynotes, great speakers, great workshops, great community, great networking. It was really, I cannot recommend enough for you to go to the next conference. Beside the speakers, there is definitely a lot of hallway conversation, I would say, over lunch, over dinner, a lot of like peer-to-peer sharing about experiences and heartaches sometimes that we have in our work with our clients in different projects. So we had a blast. It was great, wonderful community, and I cannot stress enough that you should try to the best you can to make it. To that point, if you did miss Helsinki, do not worry, because next year it will be in Dallas. So if you've missed the announcement, I'm very happy to tell you that Dallas will be the host city for the Service Design Network Global Conference next year. So probably in early October next year. We're still looking at venues and dates. So be prepared to come down to Texas in October next year, and we hope we have another amazing conference. So stay tuned for more detail coming up. So today on the panel, I wanted to quickly introduce all our panel today. So from left to right, we will have John Sexton, who is a lead service designer at Slalom, Detroit. We will also have Robin Roberts, who is a director of service design for BaylorScottWhite in Dallas, Texas. In the back over there, we have Brandon Ward, who is the Chief Experience Officer and Service Design at Precocity. Paige, unfortunately, has a schedule conflict today, so she will not be with us, but she was in Helsinki with us. And of course, Julia Dinotto from Detroit and Amanda Spence from San Antonio will also share with us their insights and learnings from the conference. And without further ado, let's jump in it. So the first question I have for all of you is, what was your biggest takeaway from the Helsinki conference? And how do you plan to apply it in your work? Who wants to take this one?
I'll jump in really fast. I have a short answer for this one. My biggest takeaway is that service design works. It's an effective methodology that's used all over the world in every kind of business, government, agency, you name it. Service design is in it, and it's the most effective way to affect change in an org, in a platform, in a design, in a government, in a city, in a library, anything else. It really, really works, and there is data to prove it.
Very good. John, do you have a follow-up? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I'll add on to that, even going beyond, just the conference itself, but to Helsinki as a city. I think one of my biggest takeaways was, Helsinki, I did not know this before going there, but I got to experience it during the week that we were there, is a very kind of design forward city where you can tell that they've intentionally integrated, design and specifically service design into the way that their city operates. And you see it everywhere, from the public transit to the signage to the amenities and services that they offer to their citizens. It was very easy to get around, as an American who didn't know the language and didn't know the culture and didn't know the streets. It was still very easy for me to, bumble around and get where I needed to go. So I think that's, that's a case study of good service design, when someone who, by all rights should have been lost in an alleyway somewhere still managed to get where I needed to go. So Helsinki is an amazing place where you get to see service design in action at scale.
Absolutely. Wonderful people, warm, very, very nice, very lovely people in Helsinki, and the city was wonderful as well. Mm-hmm. Amanda, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, getting off mute would be helpful. So I'll, like John, my biggest takeaway wasn't just from the conference, but it was just the way that different aspects of living were huge emphasis on Helsinki as well as Finland as a whole. And what I mean by that is sustainability is a priority, accessibility is a priority, inclusion is a priority, and all of this is being designed and implemented from kind of a community forward, a service design methodology. And I'm, really still completely taken aback by how well it's working. And I'm extremely inspired, and bringing this into, kind of, I've had these as things that are a priority to me, but have a little bit been on the back burner to my everyday work with clients. So what I'm inspired to do is learn more about how to have more disrupting conversations with my clients, and bringing more points of view to not only the work that I'm doing, but how it really has a ripple effect to our communities, to our cities, our states, our countries, our world. So definitely more to come on that.
Very good. Julia, what was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I think plus one, what everybody said, I think I can just do a yes and, especially to Amanda's point. Between the city itself and the talks that we attended, it was just really apparent that the impact that we can do with service design goes beyond just monetary value if we look into sustainability and the impact of our work. I think the biggest thing, and I might have to hand this off for further explanation. We had a lot of conversations. Yeah, Robin, I'm about to do it. We had a lot of conversations just between us and conference attendees about, okay, this is all great. I feel very inspired. but how can I take action on that? I feel like in my day to day, the problems are so daunting and so big, but our impact might feel very small, especially, in client work and things like that. So I think Robin told a great story about finding your dot and a way to just make impact on a small scale and still be impactful and work towards something bigger. So looking for that dot in my work. Again, Robin, you can definitely expand on that. I don't want to butcher the story. But the dot seemed to be some big takeaways about how we actually might do that through education and repetition. Those were two of the biggest things I took away from the talks, are as small ways we can start to make that impact with our work. So again, Robin, if you want to take over with the dot story and bring more context to it, I think that was sort of the takeaway. I'm still thinking about it weeks later.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And that's really at the heart of my biggest takeaway, was recognizing from the breadth of presentations that we saw there, service design can often be looked at. It is the only tool that you can take into a high complexity, big, messy, hairy situation and try to make sense out of it. But also recognizing that in some cases it works out really well in very hyper-focused small areas too. And more than anything, not every service design project is going to be massive or, these big, multi-year undertakings. Sometimes they can be a very quick turn, making sense out of what you already know, or identifying, where you maybe have some gaps that you could focus on very quickly. So catalyst was really kind of my biggest takeaway, is service design as a catalyst, regardless of the scope or scale or stage that a project is at, because that was really interesting to see. And then the whole dot thing, I don't want to get sued by Simon Sinek. It's not finding your dot, but really more about making a mark and just taking action, even if it's tiny, even if it's just putting a mark on the page. And there's a beautiful children's book rooted in that. I'm not going to take all our time talking about it, but if you're familiar with the book Dot by Peter, Amanda, help me out. It's Peter. If you know this on the top of your head.
I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, the link is in the chat if you want to check on the link.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, you're on it. Yeah, beautiful book, beautiful series of books. There's the Dot and Ish, which are a great 1-2 punch about overcoming, challenges, frustrating, ambiguity, fear, whatever it is, whatever's holding you back from making a mark or making a move. So that's where I think service design really can help that. That's what I got.
All right, thank you. So let's jump to the next question and see if we can dive a bit deeper into what you learned, what you saw, and what you can share with our attendees. Were there any particular speakers or sessions that stood out to you, and why? Let's start with Amanda this time.
So there were 4 in particular, and they all actually came together later in a panel called Sustainability Heroes. But Anna Kalina was talking about design against capitalism. Gael Gallard was talking about how to scale the circular economy and solutions to it. What's working really well on in the UK and parts of Europe may or may not be working necessarily in different parts of the world. I'm actually having a conversation with her tomorrow about how we can partner and figure that out. Coral Michelin was one of the keynote speakers, and she actually closed the conference. And her talk was about transformative experiences towards regenerated futures. So really understanding how every single thing that we do as humans has an impact, and we as service designers we're kind of in the privileged space of understanding how to create change. So if we could, basically tweak a little bit of what we're doing, we can really make a lot of waves and bring other people along with that. And then Alessandra Mulderion's Enriconi was talking about just as service designers being agents of systemic change. So those 4 really stuck out to me, and I'm going to continue to learn more from them. As I said, my biggest takeaway from Helsinki is inspiration. So turning that into action.
Very good. Thank you, Amanda. And once again, if you actually do want to watch the actual session that Amanda just mentioned, go into the Service Design Network website and buy the replay tickets. And you can watch all of those if they are resonated with you. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in.
All right.
Yeah, so there were several standouts. I think one of the ones that really resonated for me, partly because it was in a healthcare space, but there was a team from Think Place working in Africa to create a framework for healthcare outcomes or health outcomes across a continent, not just within a city or a town or even a country. It was across several countries. And what struck me as remarkable, they created basically a very high level framework of infrastructure, enablement infrastructure that needs to be true to be able to drive health outcomes. And it was a repeatable model. So they could now take this to the varying governments around Africa and bring with them this kind of toolkit of, here are the things that you need to have in place, the things that you need to consider to have successful health outcomes. So that the thing that was fascinating to me is, different governments, different policies, different funding, different realities in every single one of those scenarios, even shifts in culture and connection to healthcare. And the model was built in such a way to flex for those nuanced differences so that they could come in and kind of fill in the blanks with what needs to be there and then drive some outcomes. And then they actually had some case studies from a few countries where they were already starting to see some positive outcomes and pick up from it and, expanding their plan to scale it to other countries. So that to me was one of those beautiful kind of things of, it took a lot of work to get there, but once they had the framework, it became a model that could now, not a total plug and play, but a guideline or, a way to apply this way of thinking to get what they needed. So that was pretty cool.
Thank you, Robin. Julia, what sessions stood out for you?
I honestly think you're just going to have to do me and then Amanda, or Amanda then me, because we're probably going to have very similar answers. I raised my hand after she spoke, just because I wanted to also say Coral Michelin's closing keynote is a talk I think that's going to stick with me forever. I've already bullied my friends and family into watching it. I think it's very applicable to non-designers as well. The design content is sort of like a side note. But again, it's on that theme of like, we can do this big change with our work, but our current worldview, there's just a lot of things that need to change, a lot of dots that need to be drawn before we can get there. And I think that it was just a really, really inspirational talk. She had us repeat mantras at the end, and I have that now on my desk, and it's just a mantra to do better, to think about our place in the world and what it really means. So yeah, just really wanted to underscore Coral Michelin's talk was a really great one. If anybody does go on. Oh, see, there's your mantra. Mine was right in front of me. I dig it out, but my laptop's in the way.
Cool. Thank you, Julia. Anyone wants to jump in on the session that stood out the best for you, John?
Yeah, I think I agree with what's been said. So I'll add a couple more as well. So I think, doubling down on that theme of Helsinki as a design, a city that exhibits a lot in design. There was one of the closing kind of evening keynotes was from Hannah Harris. That was all about that. It was designing a better urban future, learnings from Helsinki. And it was really in-depth look at how they have incorporated it into the city. And by this point, I had been there for many days already and had experienced a lot of what she was talking about firsthand. So it was really cool to see some behind the scenes of how they've been working on this stuff for decades in some cases, and the different, things that they've decided to do and where they've placed their investments, and how, the city has kind of rallied around these offerings to make it possible to get to where they are today. So there was some great stuff in there about the UDI library, which was an amazing community design project, which is kind of like, to me will be my new favorite case study of how service design, can sort of be used as a co-design tool with a community to create kind of a next generation version of something that you think you know already. So like you have an idea of what a library is. They have basically brought the library of the future to Helsinki today. And it's so really amazing to see that. So her talk was great. And then another one that I thought was really cool, that I know I will mess up the names, but I think it's Ava Habakuk and Helen Tamasar were talking about how they brought some service design thinking to the Estonian Defense Force, and how they were, taking something that is, not an easy topic to deal with, essentially like an army conscription process where people are, of a certain age are expected to join the Estonian Defense Force for almost a year out of their lives when they're young and go through an intense boot camp and a long training program. And you can imagine it's not everyone's favorite experience. And there are probably lots of ways that you could still be effective and make it easier or less friction or less painful and maybe even improve outcomes. So they were able to actually partner with the Estonian Defense Force, and they talked about how they brought some design thinking and service design approaches to that essentially conscription and boot camp training process to increase people's investment in one another, their willingness to defend the country, and make the experience better while also producing, more effective defenders. So I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you, John. Before I jump to Brian, I just want to also address the fact that both John and Julia did present. They were both speakers at the conference, and they both presented a framework that we are using at Slalom called the Business Value Framework. So if you have a chance to also look at that session, you will see. And of course, John and Julia being very humble have not mentioned their own talk, which is good. Brendan, what stood out the best for you?
Of course, I loved John and Julia's talk. It definitely needs to be mentioned. I wanted to, take a photo of every single slide so I could capture the framework. I wasn't able to keep it. It was really good. So definitely worth a rewatch. I echo John. The Estonian Defense Force talk was mind blowing. Again, it's one of the things that made me go, "Oh my gosh, service design works," because effectively you have like 3 or 4 women going into the military and telling all the top brass, "You're doing it wrong." No, we've never been in the military, but we're researchers and designers, and we'll tell you how to do it right and more effectively. And of course, they didn't take that attitude, but that's essentially what happened. And eventually, the brass realized that they were right, and implementing what they did worked. It was fantastic. It was an amazing talk. Definitely watch that one. One that I really liked was Christopher Kelly Frere and Stephen Wood. It was Time for Revolution and Boldness. I've written about this particular topic before, like, why do all websites look the same? Why does everything look the same? Why is everything so same and vanilla? Well, because UX kind of smoothed everything out, and now we all kind of use the same frameworks and whatnot, and it gets really boring. Some of us are longing for the old days of the web and everything, Flash, when the UI could be round, and things, just really weird things that maybe not great UX, but they were fun. And they talked about how we didn't become designers just to make things suck a bit less, right? It's not as is plus. But that's how most things are designed, including services, right? Oh, we have this existing process. Let's bolt on a mobile app to it, right? But the process is the same, and you just made it suck maybe a little bit less, or maybe you added new kinds of suckage with a mobile app. So they talked about looking for the Lagrange points in your project where small shifts have the biggest impact, right? So in every project, there are these points, right? If you're an astrophysicist, any astrophysicist, I'm not, but the Lagrange, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but at these little inflection points where just a little bit of effort has a massive impact on the direction. And so looking for those can help add to the boldness of your project. Are we delivering a bold solution to create meaningful impact? And sometimes the answer is no, because sometimes the answer is a vanilla box that needs to be just like this, and that's okay, so long as we explored those. And then the third one, because you already talked about the military one, that was awesome, that I wanted to bring up was, of course, Andy Polane's talk was meaningful for me. Of course, one of our former guests on here, but so my notes are like pull quotes. Leadership is slow motion facilitation. Enabler is a synonym for leader, the good kind of enabler, not the bad kind. Make every meeting a workshop. Oh gosh, the meta work is the work. Companies are like a murmuration. I loved that analogy. So if you've ever seen a murmuration of starlings, right, where it's just this morass of birds and they're flying, and they pull apart and they come together. And I was like, you're right. They're not. Companies aren't real. They're just an idea. And so you have all these people and all of these ideas flying around like a murmuration of starlings, and it's an incredibly beautiful thing to watch. And there's momentum and direction, and it can shift in a heartbeat if everybody is going that way. And so all these quotes and these metaphors talked about how, business is personal, and what we bring to our business, what we bring to our clients, how we affect internally with the little things we do and the big things we do affect real people's lives in real meaningful ways. So whether it's your employees or your coworkers, or it's the consumers of whatever service or product you're delivering, the opportunity for major impact for every one of us is huge, and we need not take it lightly. We've fought so long for these seats at the table, and now that we're here, everybody's complaining about this, that, or the other thing, and it's how about we just get the job done and make meaningful work for meaningful impact, and that was a huge takeaway for me.
Thank you, Brandon. So to that point, let's talk for a second about the conference addressed any emerging trends in service design that you found particularly exciting or relevant. So there's always going to be trends in the industry. Have you witnessed, heard some upcoming trends or existing trends? Let's start. Who wants to start? Somebody has to. Robin.
I'll go for it. Yeah. This is why I was pausing, because I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but there was something I view as an emerging trend that I don't think was addressed in the conference. And it was something I was hoping to hear a little bit about. But it's more this, I know we've talked about it here too, kind of an identity crisis on service design. What is it? What is the role? What does the role entail? Are we strategists? Are we business designers? Are we something else? Are we, we do service design things, but then sometimes we're also facilitators and design thinking people. I'm sorry, I said design thinking, but that's kind of what we do. And we kind of help some of the other disciplines that are very narrow in focus piece it together for them. And there wasn't a whole lot of talk about that. And there wasn't a whole lot of talk about that collaboration between other specialties that we work with. There wasn't a whole lot of talk about our service designers, the new product leaders or the new business leaders, our other types of designers, the new leaders, coming up. And that is something that I'm seeing happening more and more, or more and more emphasis on the service designers being the strategists in an organization. Yeah. So that was something lacking for me.
Yeah, I agree, Robin. I think there is not a ton of critical thinking in a way around who we are, what we do, why we're here, right? So we definitely need to look, and we definitely will look into that in Dallas next year. So we definitely want to make sure that those conferences not like an echo chamber of designers talking to designers about design, right? We definitely need to open the box, so to speak, and bring our partners and our collaborators. And service design is a team sport, right? So we definitely want to make sure that we bring with us our partners, project managers, architects, you name it. Obviously, there's a wide range of collaboration in service design. Thank you, Robin. Who wants to add to Robin's take on the emerging trends or lack of emerging trends that you have seen in Helsinki? John?
Yeah, I'll add two things. So one on the trends, and then the other one kind of connecting to the next question, because I know what the next question is. But I think a big trend was around sustainability. I think this, sustainability, circular economy, harmony with nature, reducing waste, all of these things are very important topics for the planet, for the future of humanity, and they're complex topics that play out in complex systems. And so there is no one single solution to circular economy or, reducing carbon emissions. It's a lot, that goes into making an impact in those areas. And so to be able to be effective in those areas, you need a tool like service design or a methodology that allows you to think in systems. So I think we saw a lot of emphasis placed on that in the conference, to the point where there were several talks about it, everything from like very practical things to very high level stuff. And then you would just see people talking about it, in the questions that they were asking or in the conversations that people were having informally. It was on everyone's mind. So I think that was a big theme, even though, sort of the stated theme of the conference was designing for impact. With Julia and I's talk, we were a little bit more directly in terms of like business impact or, how can you sort of align to impact in the work that we're doing, with clients or for our employers or whatever. But I think, you can also think about impact in terms of sustainability and bigger global issues. And that was definitely a big one at the conference.
Cool. Thank you, John. Julia, do you have a follow-up? What was the emerging?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up on what John was saying, but it's, we're almost an hour in and it's 2024 and we haven't talked about AI yet. So I guess I'll break that. But no, I think obviously, AI was a topic that came up in a lot of talks. So I don't know if we want to necessarily consider it a trend, but, it's obviously everybody's talking about it right now. And I think the new piece of information or the big takeaway, something I hadn't really heard or considered before, I looked it up before this. Pablo Fernandez Vallejo's talk, Redefining Design Skills and Preparing for a Rapidly Evolving World, and Where Our Roles Are Headed. I think a big takeaway from his that he addressed was that we're using AI and looking at things like efficiency gains. But then we might be taking away and almost focusing too much on that, and you take away the part of people's jobs that brings them joy. So I thought that was an interesting thing that I just hadn't really considered with AI yet, since we're always so focused on speed and cost savings and things like that. And then, plus one, what John said about adding that planet-centered lens to our work and our framework, being used for value beyond more money.
Cool. Thank you, Julia. Amanda, did you see any emerging trends or did you wish you saw emerging trends?
No, I mean, I don't really have a ton to add past what Robin and Julia and John just talked about. I agree with you, Robin, that there's definitely there's an opportunity to tap into, and I think this is something that we look forward for our program for next year. And Greg already chatted about it, and it's like we're not going to do a whole lot if we're just talking to each other about service design. We have to bring people along, and there was less emphasis on that. And there were a whole lot of, hey, this is the framework that's working for me, which is helpful. That's great. But honestly, John and Julia's talk was the most practical on just like, not only let's have the conversation, but here's how you move forward. So looking forward to more of that. And then as far as like AI, I feel like less so in the sessions and more so just in conversation of just like, these are, as designers and service designers, we're having the ethics conversation around these emerging technologies and how is it potentially leaving people behind, or how is it potentially causing exclusion rather than inclusion. So those are topics I'm interested in. I didn't see a whole lot of that at this particular conference.
Cool. To Julia's point, can we move to the next question, or do you guys want to elaborate on the emerging trends? Brendan, you want to? No? Okay. So let me have to be sure. Sorry about that. So the next question I think that John mentioned earlier is that how do you think the conference content aligned with current challenges in the service design industry? So John, I think that you have an opinion about this.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So I think the theme was a great theme because it was designing for impact. And I think that's the thing that we should all be focused on, is less about designers talking about design to designers and more about thinking about what are the outcomes that we want to create? What is the impact that we need to create? Why are we even doing design, service design at all in the first place? It's because there's some sort of change that we need to create in the world. It's because there's some sort of value that we need to create for customers or for our organizations. And to me, that's the reason that we do any kind of design, is to create value and to create impact. And so I think it was right on target for that. The theme of the conference being about, why are we designing? It's for the impact that we need to create. And so, the talks addressed it in various ways. Some were much more directly, on theme. Some of them were a little bit more kind of tangentially related, but you could see the connection. But that is, to speak to the challenges in the service design industry, sometimes you see on LinkedIn, or maybe more than sometimes, a lot of times, people posting stuff about, the death of design thinking, or, oh, designers are having all these problems. And, there are real challenges out there, but I think you will never solve those challenges by just talking about design more. I think that the answer to those challenges is to focus on impact and to focus on value. And then design, and specifically service design, is perhaps the most effective way of creating that value. But it's not about the method, it's about the value and the impact. So to me, like, the challenge is, how do we get good at talking about that and then positioning service design as the most effective way to drive the value, rather than saying, hey, I need people to care about my design methodology more for its own sake. It's all about the impact.
Cool. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Anybody wants to follow up on that topic? Brendan.
Could you repeat the question really quickly? I want to make sure I'm answering the question you asked.
Yeah, sure. How do you think the conference content align with current challenges in the service design industry?
Yeah. So, okay, thank you. So one of the challenges we have in the States is nobody knows about service design. It's like Fight Club, right? And like, it's this really impactful thing that nobody talks about. And so to go over to Europe and hear everybody talk about it like it's old hat, it's yesterday news. Robin and I went to an evening at a company that is massive, multi-billion-dollar company that makes like earth movers and giant drills and things. And service design is baked into the way they think, in the way they act, and the way they support. And we're just like, we really struggled at first to figure out, how does service design work here? Like, why are we here? Why are you supporting this conference? And it's just because they're like, well, because service design is the best. See how it impacts everything that we do? And we're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? And like, everybody seems to get it because it's been there forever, and it's still so new and fresh and maybe even unknown in many parts of the US, and especially business and whatnot. So so to me, that was something that was really keen. And there were a couple of talks about that. Natalie Salas gave a talk about how we talk to one another. In point of fact, how we talk to CEOs and executives and stakeholders in languages that matter to them, in ways that are meaningful to them. Echoing back to Mark Stickdorn's very first time on our meetup, somebody in the chat said, well, it sounds to me like you're just talking about business design. And Mark said, business design, service design, I don't care what you call it. Just do it, right? And it was kind of, and you see those same impacts today in the talks that we gave, or that we heard. Alan Colville, who is this Irish speaker who you could listen to read the phone book. It was a really great talk. His was about prepare to disagree, and it was all about building trust, overcoming fear, supporting others, but using argument and disagreement as an inflection point for good design and for overcoming that base level bland state and getting to the better thing. So using the proper language to talk to the people around us about what we're doing, not all the buzzwords, not all the frameworks, not all that stuff, but really talk about how we do what we do and why it matters and how we bring impact. Those are the things that really mattered to me.
Well, if it's okay with the rest of the panel, I'm going to open the next question, which I think is a kind of like a sideway to this one. And whoever wants to answer, like, were there any gaps or topics you felt were underrepresented during the conference, right? To this point exactly. Let's dive in a bit more. So, Julia, do you think there were some topics that were just not there, or should have been there, or were not strong enough?
I did think there was, so on this topic of like, seat at the table, service design, our work having impact and all of that. There was one talk on it, but I kind of wish there was a little bit more around design operations and just how to set up a successful service design practice, or case studies of how people have and what works and what doesn't work. So yeah, I think more of that would have been good. But I mean, otherwise, I do think the focus on impact was well represented, and we got a lot of different angles for that.
Okay. What about you, Amanda?
Yeah, to just add on to that a bit, I think that the topic around friendlies, like to service design, like people you should be partnering with to help get your ideas or your solutions or whatever you've co-created with everybody. Who are the people, change managers, product owners, solution owners, even digital development teams, so on and so forth. Who are these people that you should partner with to actually get these things moving? And that might be kind of one of the things that as service designers, we know this or we figured it out. But I think a little bit more practical hands-on how to do these things was missing.
Cool. Thank you, Amanda. Robin, where do you think there was some underrepresentation?
Yeah. I'll yes and to some of the things. I think there was an underrepresentation of the practicality that I think others have spoken to in different forms of just getting in and doing it, or navigating. So you have a new embedded service design team. Where do you go? Where do you start? Where do you get the most leverage to get to the next stage? Or where does service design fit into a maturity model in an organization? Are they ready for service design? Are they ready for something else? That kind of stuff. I think there were a lot of examples of the extreme of we went all in service design, transformed the world, or, we came in and uncovered a great little opportunity that maybe set the stage, but that kind of messy middle part of you've got the buy-in now, but now you need to do something with it.
We're definitely going to have a chance next year in Dallas to address some of those for sure. Who wants to weigh in on the underrepresentation topic before we move to the next one?
I just want to yes and that as well. It's a tough one because right when I got back, my boss was like, "Hey, would you like to present on the things that you learned and would like to present to the company? What was the value of why we sent you over there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll get on that." Right. And because besides John, Julia, your talk is incredibly practical and incredibly useful. Beyond that, it was really, really hard to pull practical, actionable things that I could apply immediately and then and share with my team, which my boss doesn't want to hear, right? And so I'm left scrambling a little bit, trying to eke out practical applications of the really high level thinking that we saw. So that was the big gap for me.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that all the conferences struggle between the aspirational and practical, right? So there's need to be a balance between those two. I'm going to jump because we're a bit almost out of time here. I want to share that the next one. There was a tremendous amount of talking off the stage, to be honest with you. There was amazing conversation happening, between sessions, in the morning, over lunch, over dinner. Tell us what your experience was in terms of like networking, so to speak, not necessarily about, networking to get a job, but like, I know I snuck up on John and Robin in the Friday closing party, whatever. And there was some pretty deep conversation, like highly philosophical around the role of design in the world and things like that. So if you don't mind, take a couple of seconds and tell us what your experience was in terms of the off-stage conversation with other designers. I think it was about 800 people there. What was your experience around this very much rubbing elbow kind of situation with the luminaries sometimes of service design? We talk about Andy Pauline and Mark Stickdale, and you could literally have a drink with them and ask them any question, which is quite fantastic when you think about it. So who wants to start this topic? John.
Yeah, I can give a very specific example of a partnership that we actually started a little bit before the conference and did things while we were there, and now we're continuing on afterwards. And that's actually with Miro. So, as designers, we love Miro. I live and breathe it, and I'm in it like all the time. And it's really just been an amazing tool to help to paint the picture of some of these big complex systems that we work in. And I honestly don't know like if I could have done it before that tool existed. And so, we were fortunate to have a marketing lead from Miro reach out to us in advance of the conference because we were speaking and Sloan and Miro have a relationship. And so what we actually got to do there was to partner with them to design a workshop to make our framework hands-on for the attendees. And so we did kind of a 45-minute session later in the afternoon after our talk, where we got the audience to sort of provide some feedback and ask their questions and say, here, I would like to see the framework like put into practice on this specific topic. And then we did a workshop, an interactive workshop with a group of, 25 or so people to use Miro and our framework together to explore the ideas that the attendees were curious about. And back to that point of sustainability, in our talk, the actual talk itself was a little bit more of a kind of a straightforward, business example using a restaurant as the sort of context. And someone asked us afterwards, like, how could I use this for a social impact initiative or something around that? And we said, that's great. We'll do that in the workshop this afternoon. And we did a sustainability example with our framework using Miro tools and using things like Miro AI and some new like features that they have to explore how we can put all of those things together. So that was a great like networking partnership that we would not have had otherwise. And we're continuing to talk with them to now offer, similar workshops. We're going to do our talk again for Miro and some of their audiences that they have. So that's a great thing that came out of opportunity to all come together that I think is going to lead to, even more.
Very good. Awesome. Thank you, John. Julia, I believe it was also your first conference. So tell us about your experience around networking and meeting your design peers.
Yeah. Plus one, everything John had said. But also just want to add, like, I've been designing for about 5 years now. I've been service designing for just barely one. So going into that, even as a speaker, there was a lot of imposter syndrome. Not sure who we were going to meet, if anybody would find value in what we were talking about. So it was cool afterwards looking at the titles of everybody after they requested on LinkedIn, and then also kind of like crying, oh my God, I talked to a VP and they were asking me questions, So that was a cool experience too, just getting to be surrounded by so many like-minded people, really feel like a part of the service design community. I feel like a little island, especially over here in Michigan. So that was really fun. And also, I mean it, no one paid me to say this, but like just meeting this group and, meeting some people I knew of in person, meeting some extra people. It's just, we had really good conversations and stuff that's going to stick with me for a long time. And I came back to work feeling very energized. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Glad you were with us, Julia. Glad to meet you in person. Amanda, what about your experience in networking and meeting designers over there in Europe?
Yeah, so my experience, I think, was a little bit different because I am a super introvert. So the networking in person was extremely overwhelming to me. So a lot of the networking that's happening from the conference is happening on LinkedIn afterwards. So as I mentioned, I'm meeting with one of the speakers tomorrow to really understand how her company, she works for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is leading circularity and scalability and circularity across organizations. I really want to understand how our company Slalom can partner with them, but also learn just firsthand from her how some of these conversations have worked. So that's one. I've also connected with Coral Michelin on LinkedIn, and I'm also now following her on Instagram. And like Julia, I'm now trickling her work into people in my life, which is amazing. And then just really connecting with and networking with the organizers of the conference, as well as, since we're going to carry a lot of the foundation of what they've done into next year's conference. So, I mean, a different way to do it, but it's given me the opportunity to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Awesome. I'm glad you get to meet people, Amanda. Robin, I believe you have to jump in 5 minutes, so we'll get you.
I'm good. I can stay.
Okay, good. Thank you. So what was your experience around networking?
So definitely yes, and to meeting the like-minded folks. I think that's one of the interesting things for me. Service design is a pretty small community of folks, or folks that self-identify as service designers or work in the field. So it's always, for me at least, the energizing aspect of being surrounded by others that, some of the catharsis, or some of the, hey, here's what I tried in this space, or, we should really connect and talk about that offline. It kind of that rejuvenating moment of, you're on an island in your day-to-day, or you feel like you're kind of on an island, and then you get into this group and you're like, wow, no, this is universal and it's global. And, it almost doesn't matter where or what industry you're working in. There's some things that are just reality. And so that's super, energizing, healing, all the things, validating, which is what I look to for a professional group for that purpose alone. So even the content was awesome. Sometimes for me, the connections are the big value of going to the conference. I will say, on the flip side, we had, a third of our attendees were virtual for the conference this year. And I felt a real disconnect from the virtual folks. There were a couple of times where their questions were looped in at the end of some of the sessions or talks, and you could kind of get a pulse on, what were the thoughts, or, the things that were coming from folks who weren't able to attend in person. And I felt like there was definitely that networking side, or connecting side, or just processing what we just learned side of things. We didn't get that with the virtual folks and the in-person folks. So I internalized that as, is that an opportunity for us to look at next year? How do we connect that? Of course, there's value in being there in person. Of course, there's, so much more deep engagement, but there was a lot of people who had a lot of great thoughts and a lot of great angles on what they were learning and hearing that I felt like we didn't get to hear in the moment.
Yeah, and that's something we struggle every year. And obviously there is tremendous value into being there in person. As I said, I ran into people in the stairs and we had some great conversation and we connected, and, you cannot do this virtually, obviously. So, once again, I would really, encourage you to make it to Dallas next year, because it's just the value of being in person, beside the content, beside the speakers, beside everything, the value of just being in the same place with your peers who struggle with the same problems, who have success stories to share with you. There's just no value to that. It's a priceless exchange of information and knowledge, for sure. Thank you, Robin. Brandon, I believe you're the last one who hasn't chimed on this topic. And I know that Brandon was very busy doing some karaoke on the last night. So, okay.
Right. Finland is the thing, right? I did everything. Like I'm sort of the anti-Amanda in a lot of ways, right? And so it was really fun to be a part of a group with Amanda, and we could see how each of us connected it or didn't in different ways, right? But it's awesome because this community is non-discriminatory, and it doesn't matter how you want to engage. So I'm incredibly extroverted, sorry. And we got to that party and I was like, there's karaoke, there's a rave, there's a live band. I want to do all the things, but this is a group of professionals. These are peers. These are people on our thing. These are people who might be a potential employer or a potential partner or a potential client. Do I do the karaoke? Do I do the rave? Do I participate in the fun? Or do I pull back and be professional and whatnot? And all the people were out there. The same people that I'm wanting to connect with and network with, they're the first in line for the karaoke. I walk out, they're in the middle of the rave, right? And I'm like, I'm all in, right? And I was all in. I think Paige, John, and I got back to the hotel about 3 or 4 in the morning when Robin was leaving for the airport, right? So the ability to connect with these people in other ways beyond that. But amidst all of that, amazing service design conversations are happening and LinkedIn connections are happening. People are coming up to us, telling us how excited they are for Dallas next year and the kind of content they want to see us put on. And we're all becoming fans of Finland. We're fans of Helsinki. We're fans of the con. And then everybody there was brilliant. I didn't talk to a single person, be they student or volunteer. It didn't matter. Everybody I interacted with had something really valuable to share with me, to teach me. And I can't think of a single, I've gone to a lot of conferences and I'm all into all of them. And I can't think of a single time where I came away going, everybody I talked to last week was brilliant. And I want to link into them all. And I want to pull everything out of their brains and learn more. It was just, like you said, it was cathartic. It was healing. It was buoying. It was invigorating in all the senses of those words.
So we are just about out of time. It's not like Robin can stick with us a couple of minutes. So if you don't mind, one by one, tell us what your overall feeling was about the conference. I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of your expectations, how would you rank the Helsinki conference, and what was your overall takeaway as you are now back to work? Let's start with Amanda.
Best conference I've ever been to. And I've been to a handful. I'm not going to say a ton, but yeah, I agree with everything that you, Brandon, and Robin said. It felt really cathartic. These are our people. So to be there in a room or in a venue with them for 3 or 4 days in a city for the same reason, that really emphasizes that what we're doing matters. It was 10 out of 10. Definitely recommend.
So there is no room for improvement for Dallas next year, basically.
There's always room for improvement, but as far as the conference experience, it was awesome.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time, and you definitely spent quite a bit of time listening, and we appreciate your notes and your takeaway. Thank you so much, Amanda. Robin, what is your 1 to 10 and overall feeling?
Gosh, this is a tough one to say because I have such tremendous respect now, having attended the conference, being both an attendee, but also knowing in the back of my mind that we were also observing very closely as what's it going to take to pull this off. And then realizing, okay, Helsinki is an international design city, and they had incredible partnerships. I think we had the deputy mayor kick off, the conference, and the venues that were used were deeply tied to the city's history and really represent. So, yeah, I was looking at it from that lens. So I have a hard time saying that, anything that didn't go right. I think more than anything, if I was to ding it down from a 10, I would say some just reality logistics of like time between the sessions, infrastructure of, how dependent we are on Wi-Fi and internet. And especially, I was being super clever with my note taking on a cloud-based tool that kept crashing because of squirrely connections and things like that. And so there were little things that were kind of, I wouldn't say eroding my experience, but, were things that I was taking note of in the moment. So, recognizing maybe, how people engage with conferences nowadays.
Right on.
and, doing the LinkedIn QR code nod for networking things instead of business cards like the days of past. And, how do we lean into that, or connecting our virtual folks with our in-person folks?
Yeah.
I think that's where my mind goes, is kind of like, what does the modern con look like?
And I believe you were in the Toronto conference several years ago. Okay.
Yeah. And Toronto, it was a smaller venue. It felt like, I say it was a smaller venue. I mean, it kind of was one big room and then some small breakout rooms around the side. But, excuse me, it felt like there was a little more, a Canadian kind of cool. We'll just go to the next talk. And there was plenty of time to hang out and plenty of time to engage with the sponsors. I think that was something I felt a little disconnected from this year too, with the sponsors.
Okay.
I love going to the sponsors and seeing what the new tools are. There's no way I got time to do that on my own. So, I bought some great stuff in Canada there, like some decks and things, card decks, when those are really blowing up. And I really never felt I had a moment to engage, with the sponsors or do ad hoc networking that between the talks.
Gotcha. Cool.
That would be my ding. If I took it down, I'd give them a 9, because I still think Helsinki did an incredible job.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. Julia, I believe that was your first conference. So what is your take as a newbie?
Well, my first big one, the only other conference I had been to, I think we spoke to a room of like 30 people. So that's my comparison. But no, like I had said, it was extremely inspiring. I was just feeling like a bit in a rut before that. And I've come back to work feeling very re-energized, excited, passionate about what we're doing. I think what says it enough is I have never journaled a day in my life, or maybe when I was like a young teenager and had a diary, but I had so many thoughts just around the conversations we had, the connections that were made, the city of Helsinki itself, the conference experience, that I filled up 8 pages in the notebook they gave us just to write it all down. Because I just didn't want to lose any of that. And I think I just wanted more. Like, I wanted more days. I wanted to see more talks. Actually, some that were referenced today and some people's answers, I have bookmarked to go and check those out on Ring Central later, just because, that's some content I'd be interested in. But yeah, I think it was fantastic. Again, don't have a ton to compare it to, but I think the 8 pages of journaling says enough.
Good, cool. I'm glad you came over, and I'm glad you had a good time, Julia, and good job on your speech as well.
Thank you.
John.
Yeah, I think, this was my first time at a service design conference, and it was the first time I've been to a conference in a long time. I think due to COVID and that kind of stuff, I hadn't been to anything big in quite a while. And for me, I think on a personal level, professional level, it was exactly what I needed, this year and for things that are going on in my life. So I would give it a 10 out of 10 for the rejuvenation aspect, especially. The content was great. Yeah, there are some technical hiccups here and there, and that kind of stuff is never going to be perfect. Although I will say, for the talk that Julia and I and Naman gave, we were trying some fairly risky stuff from a technical standpoint, the only hybrid talk, and it went off flawlessly. So we were very fortunate in that moment. But yeah, I felt absolutely rejuvenated. My therapist noticed the difference in me afterwards. And, for that reason, 10 out of 10 would Helsinki again. So
wow, that's an amazing John. I'm glad you're beginning.
Yeah.
Once again, it was lovely to have you over. It was lovely to hear you and see you on stage presenting this framework that you and I worked on together for what feels like 10 years. So it was lovely to have you there, and I hope to see you in Dallas next year for sure. And I believe the last person is Brandon. So Brandon, what is your final takeaway from the conference?
Oh, no pressure. Helsinki rocks. Finland is an amazing country. Big fan. Would never have considered going there for any reason that I can think of. And now it's like, I want to take my family. And that is because of service design, interestingly enough. It's because of the country, the infrastructure, the way the city works and stuff. That was super cool. So 10 out of 10 for Helsinki. It was great. Overall, I hesitate to give it a number, but maybe the conference itself, I'll be the harsh naysayer. I'll give it like a 7.5 out of 10. The thing is, I think the conference was a victim of its own greatness. And what I mean by that is like every talk, every speaker, the venue, the food, just everything was great, right? It was all top notch. They were all 10s. And because of that, it was really difficult to figure out where to go, how to get there. You're all in the same building. It's not how to get there. It's not map wayfinding. That was easy. It was, how do I do that? And all the other things that I need to do, that I want to do. And sometimes you just couldn't. There was one talk, it was one that I actually got roped into. It was kind of funny. But there were 150 people standing outside that got turned away, that couldn't come into the talk because nobody else left. And that's always not great, right? That's not great for everybody. And then there were the technical things, because there were so many people, because it was sold out, because it was so good. So I think the greatness and the awesome thing they attacked, it degraded some of that experience a little bit, but it's a good kind of degradation, right? The FOMO is real because they had so much good content. So you can't really ding them for that, but it did wear on the edges of the periphery of how you feel and what your emotions are and how you related to it. But they did such a fantastic job in the planning and the overall execution, and then allowing for fun, right? Sometimes in the evenings, you were able to have fun. You were able to network and do other things. And they had stuff for you to do, or you could not. And they had stuff post-con, which I'd never seen before, right? Post-con stuff that is just fun and tourism kind of things. And I wish I had understood that better before. I probably would have partaken in it, because it was such a great time. So really, really big fan. I want to end on a high note, but the only dings they get is because they had so much good stuff. It just kind of fell over a little bit there.
So I think that overall it was a wonderful conference. And if any of you were in Berlin last year, it was also a wonderful conference. So Service Design Network doing a really good job at putting together some pretty amazing conferences year after year after year, which is not easy. And to Brandon's point, if you've ever been to a conference, from gigantic CES in Las Vegas to the more local conferences, it's always a concern for the organizer to have like a big, do we do tracks? Do we do like conferences? How do you pick your own journey, so to speak? So we'll discuss this for the Dallas conference next year. We're not really quite sure how we're going to organize, but try to address all those issues there was a lot of people actually, as Brandon mentioned, actually could not get into some sessions, right? Because you had to make a choice and you had like 5 minutes to pick a choice. And we had a lot of people actually could not make it into session they really wanted to be part of. So hopefully you can actually watch it afterward. But it is what it is. We can only we put 800 people into a building. Eventually you can have some issues. So we'll try to address that next year in Dallas for sure. I want to take a second and thank all of you. It was lovely to be in person with all of you in Helsinki. It was great. It was fantastic. Wonderful community. Thank you so much, Brandon, John, Julia, Robin, and Amanda. We're missing Paige with us, but she had a conflict today. But it was lovely to have all of you over there. And thank you for sharing your insight and your takeaway from the conference. And we hope to see you all in Dallas next year. And with that, I wish you a great rest of the week.
Thanks very much, Greg, for running this too.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.